Welcome to the Manifestation and Money podcast, Karen.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
I am pumped to have you on the show today, and I would love for you to share with the guests who you are and what your story is.
Well, my name is Karen Cheong, and I help people to overcome, transcend, release their unconscious blocks by working with them at the quantum level, or said differently, the frequency level. Essentially, I had a practice in San Francisco where my husband, Chris, and I had a real estate practice, and we were really successful. And we were one of the top producers in the city. From the outside, it would look like we were having an extraordinary life because here we were, had a lot of money. Our clients loved us. Our business was almost 90% referral based. And we had a rule, which was we only work with nice people. Chances are that they also know nice people. So that's who we worked with. And we had a really fantastic relationship, got to travel, had a great team. So on the outside, looks fantastic, right? Dream life. But internally, I felt like something was wrong. And it felt to me like we would never have enough. And it didn't matter how much was in our bank account. And it didn't matter how much I spreadsheeted every night, how much cushion we had before we would have to go sell the house and go live with my mother. I just felt like we didn't have enough. And so I always was driving our team and also my husband into trying to produce more until I knew something was not right, obviously. I didn't feel good about it, right? I was just like, this is crazy that I'm feeling this way, even though we have so much abundance that we're in. And I was kind of a control freak, or not kind of, total control freak. And I, at the time, was using manifestation to try and get more and more and more so that I would feel like we had enough. But something was really wrong because I felt not great about what we had, and I was always in this state of scarcity. And I also felt like I was looking at our colleagues and watching what they would produce and what they were doing for their clients. And I felt like we were doing so much more for our clients, but yet they were outproducing us. So I was like, what's happening here? So one day I came back from a trip and I was at my acupuncturist office, and she said to me, have you ever heard of frequency work? And in that moment, it was kind of like, that scene out of the Matrix, Neo goes backwards and all the bullets fly past him and everything goes into slow-mo. It was kind of like that kind of moment for me, but much less dramatic because time slowed down. And I said to her, I don't know what that is, but I know that I need to. And then fast forward 2 years of just intensive releasing of my distortion patterns. And finally, I had a 9-hour meditation that I was not expecting, that I did not ask for, where I essentially pierced what I call the veil of forgetting, merged back into the oneness, received everything its frequency, and realized that I could make shift at that level. And from that point onward, I never was seeking, and I never felt lack anymore. So that's, I guess, my story in a nutshell. So I help people at the level at which they're stuck, the root at which they're stuck. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'm so glad that you brought up frequencies because we talk about manifestation and frequency is a big piece of that. And I think sometimes people get to that point where they're just trying to grind it out to get to that thing they want to manifest. And they're just stuck and they're gripping onto what they want so hard without realizing that there's a big piece of allowance in there. But to get yourself to that allowance piece is sometimes not an obvious or
no, it's hard.
Tangible. Yeah. Tangible step, right? Frequencies. Let's talk about that. What you define as frequency and what does it look like or feel like?
Yeah, so on my perspective, and scientists have been talking about this for decades now, everything's vibrating. Okay, so this is not like a news flash. I think a lot of people have understood this term. And the thing is, the level of vibration is what determines how the thing will show up or the form something will take. So if you take something physical like water, when the molecules are vibrating really fast, it's steam. And when that molecular vibration slows down, it becomes liquid water. And when that molecular vibration slows down even more, it becomes ice, solid density. So if you take that same idea and extrapolate it out to consciousness, which is vibrating extremely fast, and we can't even measure it with our tools. If you want to call it consciousness, oneness, source, whatever the divine is, whatever you want to call that very highly resonating consciousness from which everything comes, into which everything returns. In order for something, for that oneness to be other than the one, there needs to be a drop in frequency resonance. When that resonance slows down, frequencies are created. When that slows down even more, something called energy, or what you and I talk about often as energy, is created or forms. And then when that slows down even more, it becomes physical form or matter, or I would even call it like your thoughts and emotion, because it's a density, like a reflection of the human experience, which is lower in vibration than, say, consciousness, which is vibrating very high. So that's what frequencies are. They are what govern reality. Now, a lot of us, like you just mentioned, feel like we have to do something in the physical in order to change things at spirit level. If I do these meditations, I'll then clear myself up at the spirit level and that type of thing. But the thing is, if you actually release your distortion patterns at the level of frequency or quantum, whatever you want to call it, the physical reality reorganizes around that, because the way things work in the universe is that the higher vibrating order dictates. Everything reorganizes around the higher vibrating order. And so that's why frequency work is so effective, and why you can manifest so much more clearly when you release your distortion patterns, because the higher your resonance is, the more clearly, the more effectively, the more consistently that you manifest. Because the thing is, like you just said, I mean, you can obviously, if you want something, if you're trying to manifest the thing, you want the thing. You wouldn't be manifesting something if you didn't want it. Nobody wants a pile of poo. You know what I mean? Like nobody wants that. Well, I guess maybe if you're a farmer and you need it, like, fertilize your fields, maybe you want that. But you know what I mean? Like, most people don't want that, right? So obviously, if you're manifesting something, it's because you're experiencing lack. In some way, you're experiencing scarcity. That's really the challenge. That's why people want to be able to manifest, because they want to control their feeling of lack or not enoughness or having enough or not being enough. Okay, so the thing is, you can't will your way to that. You actually have to release the distortion that causes all of that stuff, because everyone presumes when they learn manifestation that it's about the method, right? Like, if you learn this method, you'll be able to manifest. If you learn that method, you'll be able to manifest clearly. Can I just tell you that the manifestation method is like 2% of the game? Because we all think that we're these really clear signals that broadcast out into the universe, and the universe is going to then return what it is we want to manifest. Okay, here's the reality. Here you are, broadcasting the signal. I'd really like X, Y, and Z, but you know what happens? You hit static. So it's like, right, between you and the universe. And the universe is like, what? Right? And then you get, in return, that distorted message through all of that static. So that's what distortion patterns are. That's the thing that causes you to get not what it is that you want, to have you feel like you're not powerful enough to be able to co-create. Because here's the other thing, you co-create everything, right? So really, it's the distortion patterns that keep you from recognizing that you co-create everything in your reality.
That is a beautiful visual there. That made me chuckle, but I think that's so true. Even for us as humans, just to even get clear on what we want sometimes can be a muddled mess. I can only imagine that on a frequency level that is amplified. So how does someone go through releasing those distortion patterns?
Yeah. So first, it's to become aware of them, right? Because a lot of us want to wander around thinking life is just happening to us, right? It's like slamming us with a lot of bills that we're struggling to pay, a lot of, a situation that we may not love, but that we have to do in order to, like, grind through and be able to pay those bills, all that sort of stuff. So we're not really aware that we're even running these distortion patterns, like you said. So I think the first step is to even become aware that you're running the distortion patterns. I think that's like step number one, right? So how you know that you're running a distortion pattern is wherever you get stuck in your life. You're very aware of your distortion. You just don't know that it's a distortion. So if you are struggling with feeling like you have enough time, like you are always in the same kind of relationship where people take you for granted and you're not seen or you're not heard, you're running distortion patterns. Because remember, here you are beaming the signal out to the universe and all of the static coming in the way. That static is your distortion. Okay, it's your distortion patterns. And the thing is, when we struggle, we don't know what's happening. We're just in the struggle, right? It just sucks. You're just in it. You're trying really hard to get out of it. It just seems like you're getting slammed a lot. It just not a great experience. And so where you struggle, that is where you're running your distortion. That's how you know you're in it. Because here's the thing. If you really were this beautiful, clear signal with no distortion, you'd probably be able to manifest in real time. And you wouldn't be bothered by that stuff. And you would know that you can manifest infinitely. So why would you even feel lack? You don't, because you're like, oh, well, I want that thing. All right, well, I'm just going to manifest it. There it is. Do you see what I'm saying? You wouldn't have scarcity. It wouldn't exist for you. It wouldn't be there. And like I said, before, you co-create everything, but that's a nice idea, but we don't really feel that way. We feel not empowered most of the time because of these distortion patterns that are running. So the thing is to clear the distortion, you can start to feel that you are actually co-creating your reality. So that was like the first thing. And then your second question, which was I think first, but your second question was, how do you clear your distortion patterns, right? I mean, that sounds great. Let's get going, right? I'm pretty sure I have a lot of those things that this chick's talking about, but how do I get rid of them, right? I think that's what most people want to know. Okay, you begin by working at the level of the quantum or frequency level. Now that sounds very complicated. Everyone's going to be like, oh my God, I don't even know what the hell she's talking about, which is fair. Here's the thing, all you have to do is be in the field where you can entrain to a higher frequency resonance and have somebody who can work at the level of frequency and release your distortion. Now, that again sounds complicated and potentially expensive, but it's not necessarily. You can listen to what I call a group frequency calibration. And as you do that, I'm working at the level of the field with a large mastermind to help you to clear your distortion patterns. And so a lot of people will ask me, well, how does that work? I mean, how does it working on me? There's a saying or this notion out there that is pretty common, but I don't know that everyone understands exactly. And that is, we are one. We are one. And I realize it's something you might see on a bumper sticker and you're like, whatever, and you might roll your eyes, but we really are one. So when we come together as a mastermind with the intention of connecting to pure source even more clearly and even more deeply, and with the intention to release a particular distortion pattern, what happens is the mastermind gains a tremendous amount of momentum. And if I'm giving, for example, a group frequency calibration on, I don't know, whatever, scarcity, let's just say, the number of emails that we receive to our customer service inbox saying, I know that you gave that meditation to, or group frequency calibration to, I don't know, a huge group of people, but it sounded like you were talking just to me. Like everything you hit in terms of the distortion you released, they're like, that was me. Because the thing is, like, we really are a reflection of the one. I also have my own podcast. We have over 200 episodes. At the end of every episode, I give a group frequency calibration for free, so that you can access this work. So it's very simple. And the thing is, the tools are there. And that's what I do, is I give tools to you to empower you to raise your frequency resonance. It's not about creating codependency. I think we're like past that point now, hopefully, in Consciousness Rising. This is about you empowering yourself to be able to live into the fullness of your potential. Listen to the group frequency calibrations. They're free. But it's funny, I find with people, sometimes they can know that there's a tool. They can know it's there. But the question is, are you going to pick it up and use it?
What is the name of your podcast? I feel like we have to tell the listeners what that is right here now.
Yeah, totally. And that is a podcast called Mastering Your World Through Frequencies. You can find it on our website, which is sphericalluminosity.com. You can find it on YouTube, and you can find it on all the places you can find your podcasts. So Spotify, Apple, all those places you can find Mastering Your World Through Frequencies.
Okay, that's fantastic. I've heard of frequencies in terms of like binaural beats and those kind of things where you're listening through sound, or like the singing bowls and stuff to get people. So the fact that you guide people through that, I personally am going to be checking out your podcast now. And
Awesome.
I'm sure a bunch of the listeners will be, because I think you touched on a huge piece in the fact that we feel like we have to do the tangible action to manifest something, whereas that is just the teeniest piece of the puzzle. It's behind the scenes. It's our belief. It's our frequency. It's all of those things that are causing the static. So anything that we can do to help clear the static that we can't even physically see, why not try it out, right?
Yeah, totally. And there's also this thing that way back in the, I don't know when it was, the 2000s, whenever The Secret came out, when the book and the movie The Secret came out, that's the first time I ever heard of manifestation. It like blew my mind. I was like, what? We manifest our reality? It was like this thunderbolt. And I was like, oh my God, I totally know that's true. But I didn't know how to get there, and so I did, being a good Chinese student, I like watched the thing like many, many times, and I wrote down all the steps, and I did the thing diligently twice a day for like a year, and nothing happened. It's like, I'm doing the things, but why is this not working? Like, it's really irritating me. And it's not like I'm being not diligent. It's because I had all this stuff around attachment and low self-worth and non-deserving, and like really wanted to be able to control my reality. I really wanted this outcome. And the funny thing is about attachment, like you said at the very beginning of this discussion, is that attachment will totally bite you in the butt, right? Like the more attached you are to the timing of when things shows up and what it looks like, the less likely it is to happen, because you're gripping on so tightly to what it is that you want. But to go into that surrender space that you're talking about and to go into a level of neutrality is really difficult when you're really attached to something, right? So it's only by releasing those distortion patterns that you can actually go into that level of neutrality and surrender required. And the more you release those distortion patterns, the clearer you become. And that's how manifestation gets faster and clearer and more consistent. And I have a whole course on quantum manifestation, which is about clearing your distortion, which is really important, and also about the level at which you manifest. So, since I heard about The Secret, I was on this like couple decade quest on manifestation, because I was like, this is like freaking fascinating. How do you do that, right? And I kept failing, and I would kind of be successful and kind of not, and then I'd drop it, and then I learned something else and try to implement that and whatever. So anyway, I did all the things. I went to all the different people who said they were masters of manifestation. I did all the things, like I visualized, I felt the feelings, I felt what it was like to have had the thing, I did the mind movies, and I did all that stuff. I felt the gratitude for life and all this stuff, right? Which was really helpful. I mean, don't get me wrong, that stuff is awesome. And it didn't actually make my manifestation more consistent. And I wanted to know why. And it's because when you try to manifest from the level of thought motion, it's not high enough in frequency resonance to actually create consistency and speed. It's not, because you're using your mind, which again is awesome, but also tells us a bunch of crap a lot of times about how you suck and how you're not powerful and how that's not going to work and you need to believe this more or be a better person and do the thing. Minds are powerful, but they're not always like fantastic for us, right? So if you're actually only trying to manifest from the vibrational level or frequency resonance of thought and emotion, is simply not high enough. You actually have to get to the level of the quantum. So that's also what I help people do when they listen to that particular program. That one is not free, but you can find it on our website. But that's the next step in manifestation. You actually have to get your resonance higher, which happens, by the way, when you clear your distortion patterns. It's like chucking out heavy bags of sand from a hot air balloon. Right? Your resonance goes up, up, up as you toss out the things that are heavy. So it's all kind of interwoven. I'm speaking about it as if it's one thing, but all of these things are interwoven together. And what happens is, as your resonance rises, everything in your life becomes better, because the higher your frequency resonance, not only the better you feel, but the more opportunities come your way, the clearer your manifestation, the more abundance you get to experience. All that stuff shifts the higher your frequency resonance is.
Yeah, well said. You have such a beautiful, simple, clear way of sharing things. And the irony of you talking about clearing your static out from what you can't see, yet you are so tuned into like, here's the thing that we're talking about, and just painting this beautiful picture for people, which is amazing. I just have one more question for you, and that is,
sure.
What is your advice for someone listening who's wanting to step into that life that feels more authentic, abundance, joyful, to kind of start shifting the gears towards something better?
Yeah, honestly, the best and the fastest way to do that is to become centered in your body. And I'm going to add a second tip. Okay, you have to actually do these two things together, I think, to have the most impact. Because the thing is, in order to be able to manifest effectively, you have to be present in the body in this moment in linear time. Okay, that's just the way it works. So if you're out there in like worry land about like, what if that's going to happen? What if that isn't going to happen? Or I should have done this, or I should have done that. It's not going to work. Okay, you have to be present in your body in this moment in linear time. Now that sounds really easy, because it is, and it's also really easy to forget, and most of us aren't like that. We're like floating up here in like mind land, where we're thinking about, I don't know, whatever we're thinking about, and it's all of that thought, by the way, is informed by our distortion patterns. If you can do something like that will bring you present in the body, like movement, like if you go for a walk, or you, I don't know, or even having to like shovel your driveway, for example, since you are in Prince George, something like that, and you can listen to a group frequency calibration on something like coming into your center, or clearing scarcity, or whatever, any number of things that you feel like would be helpful for you from the podcast, again, free. Those two things together will start to clear your distortion patterns. Okay. And you might even think to yourself, oh, I don't understand how listening to something is actually going to change anything. That is because that you're rooted in the idea of the physical, right? So there's so much more at play in the world than just the physical. Remember that your physical reorganizes around the higher vibrating order. So even though at first it might just be like, okay, well, I guess this is making a difference, or maybe I do feel a little bit more relaxed, or I do feel more centered, or wait, that's weird. My mind chatter has stopped. Random, right? Or whatever it is that you feel, fantastic, right? So it may not be the biggest epiphany when you listen to it, or it may be. Some people see colors and a whole bunch of different things. But if you're doing something physical, please don't like drive doing this. Please don't ride your bicycle and do it because it's probably not great. Some people go into a little bit of an altered state. Some people don't. But you don't want to like hurt yourself, obviously. So my point is, if you're doing something like walking or something like this, where you're probably not going to harm yourself, and listening to a group frequency calibration, those two things together are like rocket fuel. Some people, it's funny, I've heard from a number of people, they work out like doing weights and stuff, listening to a group frequency calibration because they're really in their bodies. I mean, if you're lifting something really heavy, like chances are you're not spacing out, right? So yeah, that's my tip.
I love that so much. And I would love for you to share with listeners how they can reach out to you. We know there's the podcast, but how can people actually work with you to have this amazing change in their life?
Yeah, totally. You can find me on sphericalluminosity.com. My name is Karen Cheong, which is spelled kind of a little bit oddly, Cheong. That was Cheong. And for your listeners, I'm going to include a link to a free Quiet Your Mind GFC because right now there is a lot to worry about in this world. There's a lot to be stressed about. There's a lot in our media and our social media that causes us to freak out. So I feel like quieting your mind is probably a helpful thing for people right now. So if you click on that link, it will allow you to access that GFC. And as you mentioned, my podcast. And you can also find us on the social media sites, which I think you're going to put in the notes. But really, podcast and Quiet Your Mind, GFC, that will probably be where I would start if I were just new.
Okay, awesome. Yes, I will have all of those clickable links in the show notes for people. And thank you so, so much for this expansive conversation today. I know I am lifted up by it, and I'm sure the listeners are too.
Thank you so much for having me.